This is the Kitchen Sink WP podcast, episode 586.
I program my home computer.
We have a server crash, 404 error, page not found, links aren't working, system is crashing, system is crashing, system is crashing.
Your old HTML website, barely alive. We have the technology. We have WordPress. A new website, better than it was before. Better, stronger, faster. We have the technology. The technology.
Why, hello everybody, this is Adam Silvey, host of the Kitchen Sink WP podcast. Thanks for being here. Let's get started. All right, upcoming events. We have 3 WordCamps next week. We have WordCamp Logroño, May 23rd and 24th, WordCamp Toulouse in Paris, May 23rd, single day camp, and WordCamp Jinja, the 24th and 25th as well. That is in Uganda. Actually, that first one is in Spain, by the way. Logroño is in Spain. Jinja is in Uganda. And sadly, I am not planning on leaving the country next weekend, so I'm not going to be attending those. The weekend after that, I might be out of the country. We'll see. All right, moving on. Segment 1 in the news. 2 things to talk about here. First and foremost, the Eventin plugin, Eventin, developed by Themewinter, had a vulnerability that was discovered, and it put more than 10,000 websites at risk. It's now been tracked at CVE-2025-47539. Anyway, if you're running that plugin, by the way, it's a plugin that helps for event management functionalities. If you're using that plugin, you're going to want to go ahead and get that updated and patched. So make sure you do that. I'm not using it. I had never heard of it. There's so many plugins. Remember, there's like 60, 70,000 plugins in the repo. Anyway, check that out. Also in the news, looks like Foundation, a CMS provider that served a digital backbone of alt weekly publications for about 30 years, it's joining forces with NewsPack. NewsPack, if you don't know, is a service that gives news organizations the tools to publish online and to develop a loyal audience, drive revenue. It's a lot for newspapers. And full disclosure, FYI, not disclosure, but just FYI, NewsPack is an automatic owned company. Also interesting. So there you go. So there's been a merger there. I guess ring the bell. There's been an acquisition. So I think it's an acquisition. Anyway, pretty cool. So check that out if you're interested in those stories. Links in the show notes. All right. Is that it for the news? Yeah, that's it in the news. All right. Moving on. Segment 2, the meat and potatoes of this week's episode. It's been a long time since I've discussed this, and I figured it was about time again due to the fact that a few people have been asking me how I do what I do for 11 years of the podcast. So, of course, this week will be my podcasting setup and workflow in 2025. I think it's been at least 5-7 years since I've done it. I don't think I've done it since I lived here in North Carolina. So it's been at least maybe 9 years, 10 years ago. So with that said, moving along here, I want to talk about the workflow, the software and tools, hardware, services, how I kind of do this. So the workflow, my workflow is a weekly timeline. And how I prep and record and edit, etc. Well, it's kind of a weird one because I've been doing it for so long and consistently that if I it never ends, if you will, right? There's never a break in that sense for me. So typically I record on the weekend. The show comes out on Monday. It drops between 3 o'clock in the morning, Pacific Standard Time. That has not changed. 6 a.m. on the Eastern calendar, Eastern time zone. So, and then I schedule the social shares around 8 o'clock in the morning for the week. Those are all manually done. And then I start the prep that next Wednesday or Thursday, and I record on the weekends. So unless I'm traveling, I'll record a bit early, but that's just how it works. It's always been that way, and that's just the timeline. So I will record on the weekend. The show drops on Mondays. I edit the weekend, etc., and then I start scheduling and working on the next episode, 2-3 days later. So, but I have a list of shows and ideas and topics. So there is always that aspect of me maybe moving some ideas around or topics or interviews for that matter. We'll get to that in a second. So actually the next thing here is solo versus interviews. How do I handle each? And as you know, most of my shows are solo, if you're not new here. So the weekly flow is the same. Interviews, slightly different, because I want to get those recorded earlier in the week if I can, if not at least 2 weeks early, because I've had people cancel. And that always kind of throws it's a monkey wrench, if you will. It changes things. So if someone does cancel last minute, I have another backup piece of content, kind of a new topic, whatever, and I'm not like scrambling on that weekend. So if it's an interview, I record that on a Tuesday or Wednesday prior to the week, if not 2 weeks out. So that way I just kind of have it in the can just in case, that kind of thing. So On the issue and questions that come in on this regarding scripting or bullet points, how do I do this, or ad-libbing? Well, I actually script out the show pretty tightly, if you will, in one aspect, except for right there. For example, I'm looking at my script right now, I'm looking at my bullet points, and I can ad-lib and kind of speak off the cuff. And I suppose, A, it's a combination of the 11 years I've been doing this, and B, my theater background helps with that. So if I'm reading something, you probably don't know I'm reading something, which I just read right there. And that laughter, not canned and authentic. So it's for me, it's in between the two of those ideas. I do write out the show. I do script it because I want to know what I'm going to say, especially if I'm doing a review of something. I need to have those highlights as well. And of course, the bullet points, because of the top type of show this is. For example, that was not scripted, me saying type, top, etc. Me repeating that, not scripted. Okay, I digress. All right, moving on. Separate, the other section here, moving on to number 2 is software and tools. How do I record this? Well, for many, many years, I recorded using all hardware, using a mixing board, which was a Mackie 1402 VLZ. And then I actually went to a smaller version because I woke up one morning and that had burned out. And I heard a big humming and buzzing coming from it. That just reminded me of that. I went to a smaller 4-channel Mackie board, and then I would save the audio. Everything would go into the Mackie board, both either Mackie board, and then record into an Edirol piece of hardware, and then have that on a SD card, and then bring that SD card in from the Wave, and then edit that. Then when I switched to the M1 series laptops, when the fans weren't a problem, when software was really stable, I went pure software. And I say pure software, I still have hardware, obviously, and we'll get to that in a second. So now I use a slate of the Rogue Amoeba tools, the software tools, including Audio Hijack to capture audio. Farrago is my sound control board. I do use Zoom for interviews. I used to use Skype solely, but I haven't used that in so long. After pandemic, I guess, we went all to Zoom, and Skype, as of a week or two, is no longer because they were acquired by Microsoft, and they just kind of finally killed it off. So now Microsoft is now using Teams solely. So I also happen to have a podcast focus mode in my settings for my Mac that I set up with a shortcut, and I use a Stream Deck for that. I press a button, it says, how long do I want this mode to be on? I'll say an hour. It turns off all my notifications, launches the apps in question, again, Farrago and Audio Hijack. My notes, by the way, my outline is done in just a basic text edit document, always has been, and I've never switched it. Just keep that in mind, kind of old school, works for me. What else in recording? Oh, I edit using Adobe Audition, and I have some settings there to help clean things up. It's a very light edit. I host all the audio files on Libsyn, always have, and can't see changing that right now. I don't know, we'll see about that. We'll come back to that in a minute. Again, show notes and transcription, all manually done. I write them out myself. Transcription, when I've done them in the past, I used to pay a service for that. I no longer do that. If I need something transcribed, I'll use Dropbox, actually, as a first go. Dropbox, if you throw an audio file in, it will actually give you a transcription, which is not terrible. I just kind of, it's free, so I'll just do that sometimes. For scheduling or for interviews, I just use Zoom. I use a Zoom schedule in an invite there. And then promotion aspect of it, I do that manually. I used to use Hootsuite and schedule out everything out the whole week out. Now I wake up in the morning on Monday mornings and I just do it manually. It takes me about 15, 20 minutes. So that's how I do it. So I'm actually looking at Adobe Express recently to do it because I think you can make some of the graphics and the artwork that way. But, I use Photoshop, by the way, as well for the thumbnails as well. So, all right, moving on to hardware. Hardware has changed a bunch of it, obviously, from way back as far as the audio stuff. The thing that has not changed is my microphone. ATR 2100 still works, and my headphones are the ATR HP40s, which are about 25 years old, and they still work, except the end is getting a little loose with the 1/8 inch, or it's 1/8 inch, so I might need to cut it and get it replaced somehow. I've added the Elgato Wave XLR, so my microphone goes into that as my audio interface, and I've also added, I mentioned, the Stream Deck. I want to use that more, but I just kind of use the keyboard for Farrago, probably more. It's just easier and faster for me since my desk is set up the way it is and the wires are kind of short. So anything else in there? As far as audio dampening, I used to have some in my old place in the studio in California. I don't have any here in North Carolina. The old office downstairs, was a little echoey, but some stuff on the walls helped. Carpet helped. Now I'm upstairs due to my son's accident. Carpet on the floor helps, but nothing on the walls. So not too bad. I don't love it personally, but no one's ever said anything about that. So that's kind of cool. Moving on to services. Since day one, the podcast host has been Libsyn. I've never really thought about leaving. I used to have the other show there, Get Options podcast was there as well. And it works. It works just fine. As far as a newsletter email platform, I use Aweber. Always have for this show. I wanted to change it way back for some reason, but I was trying to consolidate services. The problem with doing that is the RSS feed works there automatically. It just gets, I'm grandfathered into a plan that seems to keep my RSS whenever something goes live. I think people get an email. I gotta revisit that as well. But if it doesn't work, I may consider moving it. The website is just obviously WordPress. It is due for a refresh. I'm aware of that. I'm looking into that as well. Episode 600 is not too far off, so maybe I'll kind of plan for that. We'll see. Analytics and monetization, solid area here. I use Google Analytics. I don't dive in too deep. Also, Libsyn offers decent analytics. I look at that probably quarter to quarter. Patreon, of course, and buy me a coffee, like I've said in every episode, well, since I started, and sponsorships from time to time. So that is it in a nutshell, kind of a very broad view of things, how I'm doing it. Now, the question I get a lot, if I was going to start a podcast today, would I do anything differently? Well, I am looking at starting a new podcast. I mentioned that a few months ago at the Adam Silver Show, and I want to get that going here. Now that the race I just did is over, I have some time and some focus. I'm going to see if I can't get that really kicked off. Would I do things differently? Yeah, I would. I think first and foremost, I would not use the feed burner by Google. Google has called feed burner, and it's been talked about being pulled forever for the last, since I started. I would probably go with either Libsyn's feed, or if I chose a different platform like Castos or whatever it is, they have their own RSS feed as well that you can give to Apple. I may consider those. I think sometimes when my show is delayed on coming out, I think it has to do with Google's feed. So I don't know if I'd go that route for sure. I'd also look at building an email list sooner, possibly looking to monetize some sponsorships, some partnerships, build a community a lot sooner. And I think I kind of missed out on that early on. For whatever reason, I was afraid to do that. Personally speaking, I just was, truth be told. So as far as a workflow for the Adam Silver Show, I think I also might change that, or I might give it some consideration about maybe looking at either like an Airtable, Google Sheet, Google Docs, something a little bit more interactive. So if I have guests on, or if I try to take a different approach to it, I might want to make it a little bit more easily available to collaborate. Because right now there's really no way to collaborate on the way I do with this show. So those are some things I'm thinking about. We'll see. And also that show very well may be told, it will be different, because also I think there'll be a video component to it as well, where I will record it, I think, or stream it in some capacity. I'm testing some ideas. I'm looking at some ideas. I don't know. I would love your feedback. If you think of some ideas for that show, that concept, let me know, and kind of maybe look at that as well. So there you have it. That is currently how I do things. Not really all that hard. I suggest people who want to do a podcast just to get started. First and foremost, record something that you might not even put out there. Use your phone and record it just to kind of see if it's something you want to do, and do it weekly. Come up with a schedule, do it for 3 to 4 weeks. See if you have that consistency in you, if you have the topics and the time to dedicate, because it does take time. I'm not going to lie. And if it's something you still want to pursue, then go for it. Will you make a living doing it? Not right away. I'll tell you right now. I don't make a living doing this, but I love doing it, so I do it. So there you go. All right. That's the wrap up on the 2025, how I am podcasting and what I use and how I do it. If you have any questions on that, let me know. Moving on, segment 3, tip until the week. I'm going to give a shout out and a tip to that. You listen to the LifterLMS podcast by Chris Badget. He just passed 500 episodes as well. Chris is a great guy. He's co-owner of LifterLMS, a fantastic LMS plugin and service. So check out his podcast. He puts out some amazing content on a fairly consistent basis, almost, I think, weekly, if not once or twice a week. And then they have an amazing just team over there as well. So that's it. I'll put a link in the show notes if you're looking for information on LMSs and online education. It's a fantastic podcast. One of my favorites to this day. So, all right, I'm going to wrap it up. If you have any questions, go ahead, send it in via email, adam@KitchensinkWP.com. Use that speak pipe function of the website if you want to put your voice into the show one day. You can support me by becoming a patron. You can buy me a coffee. That's awesome as well. You can also sponsor the podcast, there's a form on the website. Fill it out. And I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thanks for listening. See you next week. Now go out and do some awesome things with WordPress. All right. Bye-bye.